Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to the 143. This is episode 88, like your boy CD Lamb. This is under review, coming at you live.
Yes, it is. We are finally at episode 88, and we are super excited. We have a lot to discuss today, so let's just go ahead and get into it.
Week 2 action, stat of the week, brought to you by Andrews Logistics. This is something we said we were going to do every week, so I decided to do it with the stat of the week, just to highlight our boy Justin Fields, whose career record as a starter is now a whopping 5-22 with an 0-2 start to the 2023 NFL season. The hype machine following the Bears this offseason was crazy. We've talked about it, and we knew they weren't like that. We knew he wasn't like that, and his record is now 5-22, which, Nick, that's not a very good record to have.
I would say as a starting quarterback, no.
Not even close to 500. I mean, 500 is not even great. You want to have a winning record, and he's not even close.
And also, you're supposed to be better this year, right? Like, supposedly you have been given these offensive weapons, but I'm not seeing it so far this year. And it's not like they've really played some insanely good teams. I mean, they played the Packers week 1, who are
struggling. They're
decent, but they're dealing with a new quarterback in the system. He's not new, but a new QB1. And then they played the Buccaneers this last week, who really...
Well, they had a chance against the Buccaneers.
Aren't all that special.
And he threw a pick 6 on the goal line.
Mm-hmm.
So... that was actually on him. You can't really make any more excuses for him. We've heard the O-line, the receivers.
It just looked like poor decision making on Sunday.
He doesn't see the field well.
But we'll get into that here
that's the stat
more in a second. So your player of the week, I decided, it's got to be Keenan Allen. He put up an incredibly productive week this week. He had 8 catches for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. Unfortunately, it was not enough for the Chargers to pull out the win. They ended up stalling out at the end of the fourth quarter. They were driving down the field, got into the red zone, but ended up having to kick a field goal to send the game into OT, and then they would ultimately lose 27-24. So that was pretty heartbreaking for Chargers fans, but nonetheless, Keenan Allen had a productive day.
We'll talk about them too. Overall, week 2 showed some. So another big stat that I also could have used is in the Super Bowl era, teams that are 0-2, there's only been one team that's made it to the playoffs. Not in Super Bowl era. That's on me. It's in the last 5 years. But there's only been one team, and that's the Bengals from 2022, who started out 0-2 and made it to the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So 0-2 is not a good place to be. You don't want to be 0-2 starting off the season. It just makes your playoff chances that much harder going into the rest of the season because, you're looking to be, you got to maybe have 7-8 losses max to maybe squeeze in. So you put yourself in a tight spot being 0-2. We're going to talk about all these teams. Biggest thing, AFC only has 2 undefeated teams. The NFC has 7. So right now the NFC is looking a lot better than the AFC, contrary to what everyone said coming into the season. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about it. So Nick, kick us off. Wherever you want to go, let's go.
Well, let's just go ahead and throw out. We like to talk about the Justin Fields stats, so let's just go ahead and get into it.
That won't even take long.
211 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Completed 16 of his 29 passes, which is not great. I think that shows no efficiency with the ball whatsoever.
Yep.
Ultimately, it led to the loss when they had the opportunity to win that game.
They did against not a great team in Tampa.
A very poor defense, I would say. But that's where we'll start off is with Justin Fields. Just not trying to dog the guy, but just eliminate the hype. Because there were some people at the beginning of the season that thought he would be in the MVP race, which we talked about
as a no.
And we said that it was absurd because it was absolutely absurd. And these are not MVP numbers. He should have, if he was truly an MVP, I think he would have some great stats right now because he's played.
I mean, he's proven he's definitely not
the very bad teams.
He's proven that I don't think he's. After this season, they're probably going to move off of him if he doesn't show himself. On the other side, Tampa Bay looks a lot better than people gave them credit for at the moment. So. Baker's looking good. Mike Evans is popping off.
Yeah.
So good job to the Bucks for getting that win. Thursday night game, Minnesota, Philadelphia.
Philadelphia does not look good.
They don't look great. Minnesota gave them the game with 4 turnovers.
Handed it to him.
4 turnovers. None of them were really Kirk Cousins' fault. DeAndre Swift kind of ran over the Vikings' defense, and yet the Vikings only lost by 6. So they should have lost by 30, and they only lost by 6. And that's not a tribute to the Vikings. That's a tribute to how badly the Eagles have been playing recently. Jalen Hurts looks like a shell of himself.
He does not look very comfortable passing the ball, which is good because what dominated, like Joseph said, was the run game. And so obviously what we're looking at as Cowboys fans is how can we benefit off this. And so obviously you take away the ground game in DeAndre Swift, and I mean
they're done.
They're done because
they don't have a passing game.
They could not pass the ball whatsoever. I mean, he had a couple
big throws,
throws, but they were.
Vikings secondary is terrible.
One of them was into double coverage, like 40 yards downfield, and I think our secondary has proven themselves to be a lot better than they were last year. But it's looking good as a Cowboys fan looking at the Eagles.
You know how records don't always reflect how good the teams are. 2-0 is not reflective of how good the Eagles actually are. Their defense isn't like terrible, but their offense is not looking great. So we're not scared of them this year. Hopefully we can get the sweep on Philly this year. But Green Bay, Atlanta.
That was a big game. Exciting game
because we were with one of the biggest Falcons fans that is on the planet in Jake Vassar. He's been on the show. One of the OGs. He was pumped. They got the win over Green Bay. Bijan Robinson, 124 rushing yards.
Looking good. A lot of people are saying that he could carry them, or he could carry the Falcons to a playoff spot. I mean,
they're 2-0.
That's a very big possibility. They're 2-0.
We will see. They've got a
1-0 in the division. Yeah.
Except right now, 3 of the teams are 2-0, but the division is not great. But congrats to them.
The Panthers, obviously, they look terrible. The Saints.
The Packers are what we thought they were. They're dealing with a new quarterback. I mean, it's going to take some time to adjust, and they're not going to be as good as they have been in the past because they don't have Aaron Rodgers. So congrats to the Falcons and to Jake. Vegas versus Buffalo. I mean, there's not much to say here.
Not very interesting. I mean, the Bills just took control of that game.
Which they should have.
Because the Raiders are not a very good team. I mean, great. Jimmy G's not an amazing quarterback. He's solid in the right situation, but obviously,
Buffalo needed a bounce-back game because they lost to Zach Wilson.
All Las Vegas has is Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs.
Josh Allen was turnover-free this game.
So that was they just needed to bounce back against the Jets because it was pretty pathetic to watch.
It was very pathetic to watch them
just lose. Because they basically, I mean, Josh Allen was giving him the game with those INTs.
Baltimore, Cincinnati. Baltimore won by 3 against Cincinnati. Joe Burrow re-aggravated his hamstring?
His calf. It was calf.
So he's questionable for next week. Cincinnati falls to 0-2. Like I said before, they're the only team to start 0-2 in the last 5 years and make it to the playoffs. Baltimore goes to 2-0. Baltimore doesn't look phenomenal, but the 2 teams they've played just haven't looked. I mean, they won. They beat the Texans and they beat the Bengals.
The Bengals who have not looked like the Bengals. But then also a lot of people are saying that the Bengals brought Joe Burrow back too early.
Probably.
Saying that he didn't have enough rehab time for his calf, and so now he's re-aggravated it. And so I'm not sure what that means for them going into these next weeks because obviously
he's had some poor play the last 2 weeks.
You need Joe Burrow at 100% and in the game to be successful in Cincinnati.
I think they should have rested him week 1.
No
definitely.
Question. Yeah.
I mean, it didn't. He had 80 passing yards, so it wasn't like it made that much of a difference him being in the game. I think they should have sat him, and obviously he re-aggravated it. I don't know what to make of the Ravens yet because their guys are, like we said, their core skill players are starting to fall to injury.
Yep.
Just like they normally do. But they've got a good defense, and it looks like they're probably going to win. Early overreactions. They're probably going to win the AFC North right now.
They're looking like the clear-cut favorites. Yeah.
Because the Monday night game, Cleveland and Pittsburgh, was atrocious on both sides.
It was a slop fest. It was not great to watch. It wasn't even great to watch the Saints-Panthers game either.
We can knock the two Monday night games out of the way. Those were close games, but not fun to watch. They were sloppy. They were messy.
Obviously, the biggest thing, I believe, was Nick Chubb going out with a season-ending injury. And that was...
Yes, that's a huge loss.
That was unfortunate. I mean, that was a brutal blow to his knee. And one thing I wasn't...
It's not for the faint of heart if you watch that injury.
If you watch... I would not recommend going and watching it. But
it was a nasty one.
I forgot that actually happened to him back when he was at Georgia.
Yes.
With that same knee, he hyperextended it, and
he tore his MCL and his PCL.
Yeah.
Not his ACL.
I'm not sure exactly what he did last night.
On
Monday night. They have not disclosed the MRI, but. That's just a brutal loss.
That's 80% of the Browns' offense that they just lost.
Because obviously the offense runs through him.
I'll say this before we move on. Deshaun Watson, you can't keep saying he's rusty. Deshaun Watson looks terrible right now. And if he doesn't get it together soon, Cleveland made a huge mistake in selling 3 first-round picks and giving away $230 million guaranteed to this guy.
I mean, and I would say he's got, even with the loss of Nick Chubb, he's got some solid wide receiver, tight end weapons. I mean, Amari Cooper is good. Elijah Moore is good. I would say that Donovan Peoples-Jones is good.
The backup running back put up 100 yards.
David Njoku is still he's a viable tight end option, but there's no more excuses for Deshaun Watson. Okay, it's time for him to perform, or I don't know, or just say that he's a bust.
Yep. And then on the Pittsburgh offensive side, obviously both of these defenses are phenomenal. But on the offensive side for Pittsburgh, Steelers fans want them to fire their offensive coordinator, and I would have to say that might be the move to make because, the last few years they have not been great offensively.
I would agree. Kenny Pickett is not all that impressive. He's not looked great this season. Obviously, George Pickens looks incredible. He put up over 100 yards and had a touchdown. They've not been, we haven't really seen anything from Pat Freiermuth. He's supposed to be one of the better tight ends in the game, but these last 2 weeks, he's not been getting used, is what I've seen. And I think if Pittsburgh wants to make that offense better, I think they got to use him a lot more. Obviously, they lost Deontay Johnson due to injury, which stinks because he was your wide receiver one. And so having him and Pickens out there on the field at the same time was good for it. Just made your offense a little bit more dangerous. And then Najee Harris just does not look good whatsoever.
Nope. He's been ineffective.
That Jaylen Warren guy, who's their running back too, he's looking just as good, if not better, than Najee Harris, which is not good if you're the running back one trying to keep your spot as running back one.
Yeah, so just overall a messy game. Pittsburgh took the win by 4, but it wasn't because of anything they did.
It was just a huge defensive game, and that, yeah.
New Orleans, Carolina, we didn't need to really hit on that game. That was an NFC South battle, and it just showed how bad the division is. I would say right now Tampa's looking pretty good in that division. Based on what I've seen with the other 3 teams, it's looking like Tampa's the most complete team out of all of them, and Derek Carr needs to do better. Bryce Young, he has no protection. The Panthers are going to be bad again this year. But those were the Monday night games. Not a great Monday night slate that they had. Seattle-Detroit, the game was an exciting game, went into overtime. Seattle won in overtime, and that was good for them. They needed to win. They were 0-1, and Detroit, they'll be fine. Both of these teams are pretty good, and they'll be fighting for one of the wild card spots, I'm sure.
And also, maybe even Detroit, could possibly win that division. I'm
pretty sure they're in the lead.
Yeah, we were talking about how it might be the Vikings again. But
Vikings can't get
it was
a win
interesting.
right now.
Last year, I want to say the Vikings were 11-0 in one-score games, and this year they're starting the season 0-2 in one-score games. So,
well, you can't
a little bit of a different narrative.
Getting to one-score games,
right? And the Lions looked a lot better than what I thought. I mean, Jared Goff
they're looking pretty good.
Really good. Obviously, Amon-Ra,
we're
St.
huge
Brown.
Dan Campbell fans here.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're rooting for him. Like, if they win the division, I would be happy.
I'd be okay with that.
Cousins, but I love the Lions. Love what they're doing there. But unfortunately, they lost this week to Seattle in overtime, but they'll be fine for the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Chargers and Titans. Titans got the win in overtime. Chargers had the ball first, went 3 and out. The Chargers fall to 0-2, despite having one of the best.
It's unfortunate
offenses.
because they have the tools and weapons to be.
They have the highest paid defense.
Incredibly successful.
Yeah, and their head coach is supposed to be the defensive guru.
But it's looking like Brandon Staley might not be all that. I think
he's not. I think he's the problem.
And then also, at the end, the Chargers had the ball. Or had the opportunity to basically seal the game, essentially, right? Because they were driving down, and it was, you score a touchdown, you basically win the game.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, or you get stopped, and you have to kick a field goal to send the game into overtime. And so, unfortunately for Justin Herbert, he was not clutch, and they end up having to kick the field goal. It goes into overtime to where they would ultimately lose.
Yep. So a lot of problems with the Chargers right now. They got to figure it out. The Titans are looking like they normally do, and they're probably not really going anywhere this season. But Chiefs Jags was supposed to be this huge offensive battle, and it ended up being 17-9.
I was very disappointed. I mean, it just from top to bottom, it was not at all what people expected. Mm-hmm. It was not what I expected. I thought it was going to turn into a shootout between Trevor Lawrence and Patrick Mahomes, and I thought that would have been
obviously
super duper interesting.
A lot of the offenses in the league are still pretty rusty because the starters didn't play in the preseason, so they're still figuring it out, and you can tell that these are two of those teams that are still figuring it out. Travis Kelce played. Chris Jones played for the Chiefs. They got the win by 9. But overall, a messy game again. Patrick Mahomes did have 305 passing yards. Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore kind of redeemed themselves a little bit. Caught some passes that they dropped the previous week and lost the game. They got the win this week, which they needed on the road against Jacksonville. Colts, Texans, not even an important game at all. But something to note is
Anthony Richardson out with a concussion.
Second straight game he's left with an injury. That's not great for only playing 2 games in the NFL. He's showing that he's a little injury prone. So he's got to learn how to slide and
he just has to learn how to protect himself.
As a quarterback, that's your main job. Even if you're a runner.
He's shown that, I was going to say, he's shown that he's a runner in this league. But obviously with that, as quarterback, you're more prone to injuries if you're a runner. And so he's got to find ways to better protect himself. It's unfortunate because he looks really good. Obviously, despite that, the Colts won. But he looks like he could be the guy, possibly.
Oh, yeah. He's looking good when he's on the field.
But it's just, how can he stay on the field?
But Gardner Minshew had a good game as well.
Yeah.
And C.J. Stroud had a good game, 384 passing yards. It's just he doesn't really have much of a defense or an O-line.
Or an O-line.
I mean, so it's going to be it's rebuilding for both of these teams right now. So that's why it's not a huge game this season. But these are kind of the young teams that are building up, and I think Houston will be better as the years go on, and so will the Colts. San Francisco, L.A. That was a big hyped-up game. San Francisco got the win. McCaffrey rushed for 116. Got to give props to the Rams, though. Puka Nacua. Bet you don't know who that is. He has been a breakout star the last 2 games, Nick.
Obviously, Cooper Kupp stats. Going down was
a big loss.
That's a big loss, and people were kind of expecting that offense to stall out, but Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell, both of them really stepped up. They both put up over 100 yards in week 1, and then it was almost the same thing in week 2. They both put up incredible numbers, but unfortunately that 49ers offense just continues to dominate.
They're just a well-oiled machine. Chris McCaffrey is looking really good, but Brock Purdy doesn't have a number one receiver. He changes every week. Sorry, Brandon Ayuk fantasy owners, including myself.
Yep.
But he's looking good. It's just a great Kyle Shanahan coached offense. Rams will be fine this season. They will probably be fighting for a wild card spot. Everyone's expecting San Francisco to win that division. And they're looking like they will. They have a great defense.
That's a no-brainer.
Their defense is locked down. Not as good as ours, obviously, but probably second in the NFL.
Yeah.
But New York, Arizona, that was a letdown. Arizona 20-0 at the half. New York just came roaring back,
just blowing it.
Obviously, like everybody's praising the Giants now, like they just like beat the best team in the NFL. The Cardinals are arguably
the worst team in the league. I would agree that
with the worst roster.
The defense is not great. They have Josh Dobbs at quarterback,
who looked great in the first half.
He did look great in the first half.
But the Giants also have a terrible defense.
But obviously, it all came to nothing. But people were trying to hype it up like the Giants are worth something. But
it was their biggest comeback in franchise history. And Daniel Jones threw for 321. They did lose Saquon Barkley.
Yes, that was a big thing.
Another running back injury. So in the offseason, when Nick and I were saying that running backs don't need to be paid because
they're injury prone, I would say we were correct.
And we've had about 5 to 6 big injuries in the first two weeks to running backs. So I would say they're proving us right, unfortunately. Not that we're rooting for them to be injured, but this is why they don't get paid those big second contracts. Okay, Giants, Arizona, that really wasn't that important. We will talk about Dallas.
I mean, we just got to get there, because there's a lot to say. Obviously,
there's a lot to say.
It's so easy to get super excited and, get the whole narrative of it's our year.
We controlled the game yet again.
That's what I was going to say. We looked very good on offense. Obviously, big thing, lots of field goals. I believe we had 5.
The second half, we weren't scoring as much touchdowns. We had 5 field goals, yes. Yeah. Only 2 touchdowns to account for. However, that game was decided from the first quarter. It did not even look like the Jets had a chance. I don't think, even though we kicked 5 field goals, our offense was not playing with any urgency, nor did they need to.
Well, because I was going to say,
our defense
by the fourth quarter, it wasn't, the offense didn't have to, feel rushed to get the ball in the end zone. It was just kind of protect the ball, keep it, drive down the field, and then just take whatever points you can get out of that situation. But obviously the big thing is Dak is still interception free.
He is.
Knock on wood, if you could hear that. He completed all 12 of his first 12 attempts. He started out the game 12 for 12, which is incredible.
That is not normal for Dak.
It is not normal. And
against a good defense.
He ended the game 31 of 38 with 255 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Obviously, now that we've played the Jets and beat them pretty bad, everyone's saying that the Jets' defense isn't as good as they all thought.
I was going to say...
You don't want to give credit to Dallas,
because
which is fine.
They keep moving the goalpost, right?
The Giants was the same thing.
With the Giants... it was, the Giants are actually bad. Even though at the beginning of the season...
They had a great offense.
They were talking about how they have a great offense, that their O-line was going to shut down our defensive front. And everyone was expecting the Giants to finally beat the Cowboys after years of getting smacked by us. And then we go out there and put 40 on them and give up none. And then they want to talk about how, the Giants actually aren't that good. So the Jets come to town, right? And the Jets
defense is amazing.
Are supposed to have one of the best defenses out there. I mean...
Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is hurt. Nobody's expecting their offense to be as productive.
They like to talk about their star-studded cornerback duo in DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner when,
everyone was saying the Jets would cover the spread of 9 points.
I didn't see that.
This was a 20-point win. And I think it's safe to say we own the state of New York.
You let Dak dice you up for 255 and 2 tutties. So it's, we shut down that whole stigma. But then it was like, actually, the Jets aren't playing to the best of their ability because without Aaron Rodgers, they're hanging it up for the season.
Everyone was saying the Jets could still be a playoff team. Now, after the game, everyone's saying that they're going to be fourth in the division. So we just don't get credit when we win, but we get lots of heat when we lose. That's just how it is being America's team. But honestly, I say keep doubting us, please, because we don't do well when we're expected to be at the top. So let's just keep looking at us like the underdogs. We've got a game against Arizona next week. Hopefully we can shut them down before focusing on some actual big games.
I was super happy about was our third down conversions. We were very efficient with the ball on third down.
Again, against a really good defense.
Off the top of my head, I want to say there was only one 3-and-out that we had that game.
Yep.
I mean, I can only think of
it was
one.
after we were up.
But the reason why I think that's so significant is because I feel like we had so many of those per game last year. We would have like 3 or 4 3-and-outs, which is really frustrating because
it kills the game.
It kills your momentum, and you want to give your defense time to rest on the sidelines when they're giving you the ball as an offense.
So, all in all, great game from Dallas again. It's really early in the season, but we're looking pretty good.
But, I mean, there's obviously 2 things to consider, the Jets had just played the Bills and Josh Allen, and
won.
That week before, Josh Allen threw for 236 yards, a touchdown, and 3 interceptions. And Josh Allen is often talked about as 100% a top 5 QB in the league, but some people would put him top 3. And Dak threw for more yards, more touchdowns, and less interceptions. So, I mean, that's something to think about, right?
He's looking good so far. I don't think next week will be a test, but the following weeks. I mean, we've got a tough schedule, but we're looking good right now. Hopefully our defense can keep playing at the level they've been playing at. Denver, Washington. Russ doesn't look great. They got some things to figure out there in Denver. If you're letting Sam Howell beat you on the other side with Washington. Miami, New England. The Dolphins took the win as everyone expected.
Yep.
Miami's looking good this year. They look like the best team in the AFC as of right now. But that's all the games this week. I think in the following weeks, we won't be able to get to all the games because there are storylines that are coming out of all these games now.
Absolutely.
As we get into the season, there will be more on the line for certain teams and less on the line for other teams. So this will probably be the last week we hit all the games.
But obviously, we're going to have to hit the Cowboys every week.
But we will talk about the Cowboys
because,
Absolutely.
Because they're under the most scrutiny every single week.
The big teams, the big games, and obviously the Cowboys from here on out. So after week 2, you can start figuring a lot of stuff out. Trends and how teams actually are. So,
I was going to say after week 3, week 4, that's when you see if teams are actually good or if they're actually bad.
It's crunch time.
Right? Because you've had 2 weeks under your belt, right?
There's no more rust.
You're used to the speed of the game and the speed of the receivers and whatever and all that stuff. So by the time it hits week 3, you should have figured things out.
Week 1 and 2 basically can be kind of like it counts, but it's preseason. Kind of everyone's still not. I mean, they didn't play in the preseason. They're shaking the rust off, figuring things out. So week 3 it starts getting more like playoff importance because in the NFL, you don't have as many games as the rest of the leagues, and so every game starts mattering.
Every
game
counts.
More. Yeah,
which is why obviously we think it's dumb that you kind of treat the first couple games as a preseason. Let your starters ease back into it because every game essentially does matter.
Yes,
because you got 18 weeks.
Like we said
17 games.
0-2 teams don't make it to the playoffs. Only one in the last 5 years.
Exactly.
So if you're 0-2, there's a good chance that you're not making it to the playoffs.
And I guess we'll leave you with, the Cowboys have outscored New York teams this year 70-10. So we own
New York,
the city of New York, as Dallas Cowboys fans.
And we play Buffalo later. Hopefully we'll beat them and win the state.
That is something great to think about. But nonetheless, we like to end our shows on Under Review. I've brought to you a quote from the Tom Brady.
The GOAT.
If you want to perform at the highest level, you have to prepare at the highest level mentally, and that's the truth.
That's what we did this week, and hopefully we do it again next week. against the Cardinals and smash them. Thank y'all for tuning in this week. We'll see you next week with another episode of Under Review.